Welcome to No Compromises, a peek into the mind of two old web devs who have seen some things. This is Joel.
And this is Aaron.
I recently attended a conference, and conferences are kind of exciting because you hear new ideas and you talk to people in the hallway and hear how they're doing things on their projects and in their company. And a lot of times the speakers are sort of authoritative on a subject and you're listening to them. And I just had this thought personally, as somebody who gets excited about technology, that there's probably some benefit to not just diving in. Like if you attend a talk on some new way of testing, that you don't get back to work on Monday and just dive right in. You know what? We're changing our test suite over. We're doing this. That's a new thing. And so I thought, I'm probably not the only one that has that tendency or that itch to do something like that. And maybe we could talk through kind of how we actually try to approach these things in the real world and strike a balance between like excitement about new things, best practices, new techniques, but like the realities of like a real production project and work for a company.
Yeah, so I thought I'd give a couple thoughts first from my experience. A lot of times being managers of developers who I send off to a conference,
Okay.
and then they come back and they tell us we're doing everything wrong. There when you are in a project for a long enough time, the first thing you start to kind of develop is like, I know where we're doing the things wrong, and so like when someone finds out how to do something a better and different way, which is something we're going to talk about a little bit here. The first thing when you come back, try not to just say we're doing that wrong, because it's like, yeah, we probably know that. And then I also say from a manager point of view, I send developers off to learn new things so that they can put together a better case to do that new thing, not just immediately do that new thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And then I have to work that in with all the other business needs that we want, because that what they learned can save the company money, but it can save the company money down the road. Whereas you want your paycheck next week, we have to we have to keep doing the things that we're doing right now in order to get that to keep working.
Yeah.
So right away when you say that, I get this flashbacks to being the boss, sending some devs out and them coming back and be like, we're doing everything wrong. We have to change, and I have to be that bad guy and say, yeah, I know that, and also we're not. And then they look at you and be like, what's wrong with you? So no, there's a lot of things you have to balance in with that. But I think one of the things you're kind of getting at was more so like maybe I think they kind of overlap is maybe it's time to evaluate what this next best practice thing that I learned means in the context of our application and our skill sets.
Yeah. And because let's just start with the assumption that the best practice being preached actually is something beneficial for our project. There's probably like 10 new beneficial things you could do. So you also have to weigh like which one will have the most impact, which one will actually address the problems that hurt us the most right now. And so that's a factor to consider as well. But I also think that not everything labeled as a best practice, or to even extend it, not everything that big company X does is really a good thing for your 3-person team, that has an app that 1,000 people use versus big company X, which has millions of users, right? So that's the other thing to try to figure out as a developer too, is like, does this really apply in our situation? Even if it is a good thing, maybe it's not objectively good across all times and places.
Yeah, it's a good point of view too when you think about like what is the size of my team and what's the output that we need. So I've worked with teams and helped development teams grow from 2 to 3 people. And you might think like, that's just another person. Like what's the big difference? Well, there's a huge amount of difference between 2 and 3 people on a team. And then there's a much larger difference between 10 and 100 people on a team.
Okay. Yeah.
And so when you start looking at, it's not just the amount of people, it's all the different processes. And so you start to see these processes that maybe make this app, faster by 20% if you have this microservice and that or whatever. What you fail to see is that they had 100 people on that team, and 6 of their jobs full time was to manage those microservices. And they can do that because adding developers 2, 3, 5, 7, you don't get 7 times as much. Then you
Mhm.
start to lose some of that. So even if you had 100 developers, you don't have 100 times as many things being done.
Mhm.
And so you actually have wasted work. And so instead of wasting that work, we can put some of those people on different types of tasks. And those different types of tasks help manage those larger systems. And so the size of your team really does matter on the type of technology you pick as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So more on like the idea of, is this good for us? I
Mm-hmm.
think one thing that's very easy to lose sight of when you're in that post conference glow of information is that any new practice or best practice, there are some trade-offs, right? So if you're going to adopt this new thing, or you want to use this new package or this new way of deploying your app, it may solve 10 problems, but it may also introduce like 2 different problems than what you currently
Mm-hmm.
have. And it's
Yeah.
so easy in the excitement to like not even consider, well, what's the downside of doing this? And I've personally bumped into that, and I've kind of come to the conclusion that with some of these things, it really is good to approach them as a trial. Like, hey, look, instead of taking our main customer facing revenue generating app and using that as an experiment for this idea, what about this like little back office system that like 3 people use once a month? Like, could that be a good test case to see, does this make sense or not? And maybe you'll evaluate and be like, whoa, I'm really glad we didn't just roll that out into a much
Mm-hmm.
larger project. It's like a safer bet when trying something new out.
You brought up tests too, and I can use another concrete example.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say that you have a decently large application, you have a lot of work, and you don't have any tests whatsoever.
Okay.
And you really don't know that that's the thing. Like, so you've learned this at a conference that I should start testing.
Okay.
Some of the challenge there is then when you come back and start looking at implementing testing, one of the trade-offs is it's going to take longer to write your code, but only in the beginning. So that's the
Mm,
other thing that we need to keep in mind too, is some of these
sure.
things are going to be more painful and have more expense in the beginning, and then they'll slowly start to taper, and you might
Yep.
get more benefit or you might change. So when I think about when I first started writing testing, I just saw all my applications start taking twice as long to write. And I said, well, I get it. It's going to stop bugs, but I'm so good. I don't need tests. I don't write buggy code, which of course is silly. But I also noticed that the longer I practiced that discipline, the faster I got, just like typing and things like
Yeah.
that. But it also changed the way I started writing code so that my whole process was much better and faster too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when you talk about some of these things and you talk about the cost of them, it's important to understand even further beyond the first test or trial. It's like what's the ongoing cost, and will this affect change in our organization and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of things to calculate and weigh, but that's another good one. Good example.
Another one that I ran into was integrating some sort of continuous integration platform to check for errors and then stop the release if there was errors in
Mm-hmm.
there. And we had to keep in mind that for a trial when we ran it, it was great. We ran it on some of our dev branches, but we had a QA team, and they didn't necessarily know what that meant when a branch stopped when it went to QA because one of these automated things failed. So it wasn't even just trying it out and seeing if it worked for us. We had to now alter another department's workflow
Yeah.
based off something that we wanted to use.
Yeah. There's the bigger the team, the more sorts of those interdependencies you're going to have.
Yeah, I mean that's you're that Robin Hood programmer, and I got that background with hundreds of programmers. So
Uh,
like I'll just do whatever I want. I'm like, no, hold on.
so I like this topic mainly because I'm battling this exact thing right now. So in my case, some of it was stuff I was talking about, and it's like, oh, we could use this in this project and that project and this other project. But the reality is, you have to approach it in a balanced perspective, and you really, especially if you're not a lone dev, you have to get buy-in from the rest of your team. Otherwise, you're just going to irritate people. And maybe it is a good idea, and you'll just turn them off to it because of the way you introduced it too. Was going through a fast food drive-through the other day. We were getting some McDonald's for the kids, and my
For the
wife was
kids or for everyone.
just for the kids. I wasn't eating anything.
Okay.
So she was relaying to me the order. So I'm placing the order and she's like whispering it to me. So she's like, get 4-piece nugget meal or something like that. But I said, I will have the 4-piece chicken McNugget meal. And just the fact that I said like the whole phrase, like trademark, she freaked out. She's like, why do you have to say McNugget? I said, no, I said chicken McNugget. But it was like, sometimes I'll do things to be annoying or to try to be funny. In this case, like legitimately, it's just the way my brain processes it. I'm looking at the menu. It says, that's what it says, chicken McNugget meal. And so that's what I said. And I was like some sort of monster for actually saying the product the way it was supposed to be ordered.
I don't know about you. Like when I go into the drive-through too, I guess I get the same thing. We've talked about this as you get when you menu too. You go through a drive-through, you're like, I know what I want. You look at the drive-through sign, you suddenly go, what? What are all these things?
Yeah.
And then like I saw a new McDonald's has like the big displays. So technically they changed them. And so I'm a creature of habit. I'd be like, oh, I know I want a Whopper, which is not the same place.
No.
But I don't know, Big Mac. I don't really eat there anymore. I want a Big Mac, and but I know that I can't order it without staring at it. I don't know why. And so I look and then suddenly it's like, it's a chicken McRib or whatever. I don't know.
It's definitely not a thing either.
Where is the thing? But I don't know if you remember, there used to be a place called Hot and Now. And it was basically it was just the cheapest hamburgers possible. And this is probably back in the 90s. And it was like you get a hamburger with nothing on it, like some pickles and ketchup mustard for the 39 cents. That was a good deal. And so we'd go through after going shopping for a long trip or something, and went with my grandma one time, and I did not realize that she can't yell, but she also thinks she has to yell.
Okay.
And so she was like always losing her voice already for some reason. And then so we went there, and she pulls up and she rolls on the window and she goes, I'll take 7 hamburgers. And I'm just sitting there going like, what is happening? And they're like, excuse me, ma'am? 7. And like, that was the first time, like as a young person, any other time I just yell, I'll take 7 hamburgers.
Yeah. Like a whisper yell.
Yeah. Like just, she could talk and like she could yell at me perfectly fine.
Okay.
David, but when it comes to like yelling for something else, it was like,
too much pressure.
Yeah. Do you feel like maybe you just know Laravel and haven't mastered it yet?
You're not alone, and that's why we made masteringlaravel.io. Check out the site to learn more.